Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm just going to take a moment here, get over to my email so I can see if anybody is reaching out, and we're going to go ahead and get started now. Just a few quick notes for anyone who is joining us for the first time. I'll have a few bits of information for you. For anyone who has been to our webinars in the past, as always, welcome back. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. We're always happy to have you all. Just a couple of notes before we get started. So this is a webinar format rather than a Zoom meeting, which some of you may be familiar with. So if you have questions during the class, you're going to type them into that Q&A box on your Zoom menu. I'll be monitoring that during the class and giving those to Peg when she takes questions. If you have any other issues, I have the chat open as well. You're welcome to send me a chat. I monitor that. We are recording today, so if you have to leave early for any reason or you want to come back and access the class, anytime, share it with a friend, whatever, you can do that. The recording will be available tomorrow. We'll email it out, and it also goes on our YouTube channel. My last note for Peg is she doesn't have a plant list for us today. So I'm going to send out the names that I know and am able to spell. I'll send those out to you all, and we will send you a finalized plant list tomorrow by email with corrected spellings and whatever else. I'm usually pretty good on annuals. Perennials get a little dicey with my spelling. So I make no promises, but I'll do my best. I think that's it for me. As for those of you who don't know Peg, which I know many of you do, Peg works primarily at our Fair Oaks store. She's been with Merrifield for many, many years, is one of our primary and lead instructors on a variety of topics. And she's talking to us about ground covers today, which is a fun topic, one we make sure we try and cover at least once a year. And definitely a good one. So Peg, I will go ahead and hand it over to you and be ready to type plant names into the notes.
Yes, and welcome to the seminar today. And it is about ground covers. And that doesn't sound very exciting, maybe, but it should be, and it could be, because anything that covers the ground is a ground cover. And so we're going to talk about a diverse number of plants today. And of course, we'll only skim the surface. What we will be talking about is not only those things that are easy to cover the ground, even in large areas if you choose, but also the ability to take what you like from that, even if it's a large area, and pull it into a smaller space. Certainly, covering the ground lowers maintenance. And there are many ways to do that, many types of plants to use, in addition sometimes to mulching, okay? But thinking always in terms of not just color in flowers, which annuals give you usually for the full summer, and perennials give you through periods of bloom time. Some of them have longer bloom time than others, but when you are thinking about what to use, think in terms of color within the plant itself and texture within the plant itself. You have the dark leaf of this heuchera, or coral bells, Heuchera, heuchera. And then you have the broader and very fuzzy and pleasant to touch leaf of the lamb's ear, Stachys, Stachys. And this is Stachys big ears. It's bigger than some of the other ones. It's a wonderful ground cover, by the way, and can be used and thought of as a ground cover. Throw into that more texture and color. This is how we develop a lot of interest in ground covers. Look what happens when you add that Carex. There are a number of carex in that family, and they're all very useful. But look, even without any flowers, these are really lovely to look at, and grouped can become a ground cover. Okay, I do have some pictures that I will run through because for me, a picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. And the very first picture that I'm bringing up here is an absolutely gorgeous private garden that I was lucky enough to be invited into. It's one of the most beautiful that I've seen, I think, in a small private garden. Now, saying small, this is not small. But if you have a small space, think about how you might use some of these plants to pull together, planting enough of them to be an emphasis, okay? But look, without any flowers at all, this is an absolutely beautiful space to be in. So you've got the dark of the black mondo, Mondo, although its proper name is Ophiopogon, Ophiopog. That's not exactly right either. Ophiopogon, okay? That's the dark one. Contrasting with the variegated hosta at the edges of a gorgeous Japanese maple. So you've got color pickup with the maple and with the mondo grass. And then you've got that wonderful contrast with another grass, which is golden, and that is the Hakanachloa, Hakonechloa, Hakanachloa. I can't name all of the plants that are in this, but I believe from that you can get the general idea. Now, why do I think this is a ground cover? Because those leaves are covering the ground adequately that you'll get very little seeding of weeds within it. The mulch is a composted leaf. Now, this is what she uses in this area for mulch all the time because you've got competition. Anytime you plant around trees, the tree roots are going to get moisture. They're going to get whatever fertilizers you use. And she uses a couple of inches every year of leaf growth. And as far as Merrifield is concerned, we do sell that in bulk. We also sell it in a bag. And I'm I'm enamored with it. I have my own compost. I compost all my leaves at home. And everybody doesn't have the space to do that, but I do. But I never have enough. And so I use a lot of our leaf growth. So let's do the next one, Jamie. This is within that same garden. As you're walking down that path, you are again seeing these plants used as ground covers. Another great one are the perennial ferns. Now, the things that we're talking about here are not annuals. They are perennials, and they do benefit from the addition of that organic material over the soil because it's constantly improving that soil as it breaks down. And another additional one that you can love or hate is the creeping Jenny. And you can have a love-hate relationship with that, but it can be beautiful. And it isn't really difficult. And you can call it aggressive, okay? But it isn't difficult to rid yourself of what you don't want. And it is a wonderful color pickup and brightens those dark spots, and it reflects the color that is within those hosta. So you've got again that Hakonachloa grass that is drawing your eye into the future. And the next one, Danny, please. Here is another lovely plant, and it becomes a ground cover here because it too has the broad leaves, which helps to keep down, not perfect, okay, the weeds. and it's planted in enough of a mass to be a real emphasis here. Behind that is an interesting plant, and I hope to point out a few really interesting plants as we go along, and maybe underused plants. And right at the moment, we're talking about things that like shade. They would love full morning sun, but they would not like the whole afternoon hot sun. Dapple light throughout the day is fantastic. And the wonderful yellow that you see in the back actually dies back in the wintertime, but it's very prominent throughout the growing season, and it is Aralia, Aralia, Aralia. And the next one, please. And this is still keeping within that garden a continuation, but this is really working in the larger garden because she's also done a lot of repetition. Repetition by using either the same color tones or the same or similar plants. There's the dark leafed coral bells, and the larger dark leaf is ligularia, Ligularia. There's fern there. There are a couple of shrubs there. One of them is clethra, Clethra, and I think one of them may be deutzia. I'm not really sure about that. Okay. Now, still within that garden, but in a totally different area, we're talking sunshine here. Full sunshine. When we talk sunshine and you come into the garden center and you look at a plant label and it says full sun, don't back away from that plant because you don't have full sun. If you have 6 hours of direct sun, you can grow most of these plants satisfactorily. They may not bloom quite as heavily in full sun, but some may do better with that, okay? And we're talking about afternoon sun, which is the hottest sun that we have. But almost all plants will love full morning sun. Shade plants will love that, plus dappled light. And sun plants need at least 6 hours of direct sun. All right, how does this play with ground covers? Okay, she is a rosarian and she has beautiful, beautiful roses. They are in the background, but in the front of those borders, which she has a numerous borders, she has the opportunity to grow other things, and they can become ground covers. What she has used extensively here is Nepeta, Nepeta. Catmint is the common name. With this particular plant, in fact, come back to me if you will, then. This is a smaller plant of the Nepeta. And this one is by Proven Winners. They put out some new plants and some are really interesting. The older plants are great too. Okay, don't walk past those. This one is called Cat's Pajamas. Now, when this finishes blooming, and remember this is a young plant, when this finishes blooming, if you cut back that past but just above a leaf node, if you cut those back, or you can shear it, it'll be all right, it will rebloom. Sometimes you can get 3 periods of rebloom out of this catmint. So for a perennial, this is a very long blooming plant. Okay, if you chose to have other things, and maybe not necessarily right in that area, and you wanted some color, you didn't have all those roses or they'd gone out of bloom, or you have a small place in your townhouse back garden, I'm not going to eliminate the use of annuals because it is annuals that give us the long period of bloom throughout most of the summer, most of the time. And they too can become ground covers. And I will have a few pictures as we go along here showing annuals, okay? But here, a plant that you may not be accustomed to, and I was talking to one of our customers this morning down there about how underused this plectranthus is. Plectranthus, plectranthus. This is an annual in this area. This one will spread out, and it has a broad enough leaf to be a good ground cover. Now, we're always concerned, and even with ground covers, you can include areas that are good for the birds, bees, and butterflies, okay? And I'm particularly interested in the wonderful hummingbirds, okay? So I brought up just a few plants that you can always use as an accent within your garden, okay? I'm not necessarily saying in a rose garden, but in your garden. Let's say that as a ground cover, you are using this plectranthus, which is going to scoot around and it'll come up a bit too. And you're going to add in the back of that, fairly new, it's been around a while, salvia. Salvia are fantastic and they are much loved by our pollinators. This one is, it's been around 4 or 5 years, okay? And it's called the Rockin' series. And there are several colors in there. I'm particularly fond of this Rockin' fuchsia, which is just budding out here. You really can't see that bloom very much, but it is lovely when it blooms. Now, this plant can get to be 3 feet tall easily. So that's a background. And you could plant several of these, even in a small space. And we're thinking ground cover here now, okay? Another one that is a fantastic attractant as a pollinator is lantana. Now, this can grow intermediately. This can be among all of this, and the lantana come up and grow through and around all of this. Blooms all summer. Need to deadhead it, okay, because it does form little berries, and need to deadhead it to keep it going, all right? But a wonderful plant that can certainly get 3 feet tall. Down south, it's a shrub, okay? You can throw into that near the front, and depending upon if it's as big as this table, you can use maybe 3 of these and 3 or 4 of those, a couple of these, a couple of these. Here is an invaluable plant. Now, you wouldn't think of this necessarily as a ground cover because it doesn't have large leaves, but joined into a grouping of these things, it can become a ground cover. And this one is Cuphea, Cuphea. There's a number of types of Cuphea, and they're all beautiful, and they're all attractants, but Vermillionaire is top of the list, okay? So I've just showed you, if you want spots of color, a few plants that can, handled properly, be ground covers and give you long periods of bloom and attract your birds, bees, and butterflies, okay? Let's continue with some of these pictures. Now, again, I am showing you another attractive perennial. This one is a penstemon, Penstaman, or O-N, I'm not sure which. And there are a number of varieties of these. I'm not naming variety right now because there's so many of them. A fantastic bird, bee, and butterfly that could be a part of the grouping that I just showed you, okay? And in the next one, we're talking about other groupings. Here, again, getting a mulch going around them. I'm particularly fond of the Virginia Fines mulch, but I'm really fond of using leaf grow as a mulch or composted leaves. In this picture, you are seeing the Nepeta that I showed you earlier that can be trimmed back and you can get possibly 3 blooms out of. You are also seeing a Veronica. That one's purple candles, but there are others, and they're very showy. And again, after that bloom looks tired, you cut it back and it'll rebloom. The plant around it, the blue one, is a geranium. One of my absolute favorites is Roseanne, Rozanne, Roseanne. And it blooms off and on pretty heavily throughout the whole season. So we're talking about a ground cover here out from perennials. Now these do require some sunshine. Okay. Now it's fun. I'm trying to introduce several people's thoughts and ideas. This is a narrow space between townhouses. And there are some areas that get a fair amount of sun, believe it or not, and some areas that are more shady. But this is how you can use even a small space. And this is actually Romero's garden. He's head of the perennials department here at the Fair Oaks area and has developed this over the years. And he uses it as a major party place for all the neighborhood because they come and they walk through here. The children are exposed to all of this. In fact, they cater to them, and there's a little play area in the back there. But what you're seeing, and I'm not even going to begin to try to name all the plants that are in here, because he also uses it as a not just as a display garden that he can enjoy, but to learn about some of these plants. He has variegated liriope there. He has, yes, he has that creeping Jenny that is becoming a ground cover underneath all these plants and really makes them shine. He has, the yellow is one of those Aurelia. He's got all manner of plants in here, whether it be a stilby or various types of things. In fact, there's a close-up here, the next one of some of that. This is actually in one of the hotter spots that has a lot of gravel around it because sedum need excellent drainage. So that little plant that's in the front there that has some small blossoms on it is a variety of sedum. Lots and lots of sedum there. And then behind that is a marvelous perennial called Baptisia. Now, Baptisia is not a small plant. It certainly will grow to 3 feet. But look at the color contrast again that you've got in here. He's got one of those darker coral bells. He's got the Aurelia and the other perennials that are surrounding it. I see in the background some hydrangea. But look at this. You don't see the ground here. In the early spring, before all these things emerge, you do your mulching, whether it be, as I said, the Virginia Fines, which I love because the water penetrates that nicely, and you can use both. You can actually put some leaf grow down, and if you don't like the look of that, although you're not going to see it for very long, because you've got all these plants that's going to be covering that ground. So you are talking about ground covers here. And in the next one, you are talking again about an area that drains well and various varieties of sedum have been used here. Now this is here at the Fair Oaks location. And yes, right now we've got some weeds in that, and somebody soon is going to have to get out there and do some weeding because it has not had time to completely close up. This has only been in the ground for about 18 months. But they make a wonderful ground in a hot, dry area if you've got it. And there's various types of sedum because in the background of this, there's sedum autumn joy. which is much taller. It's a 2.5 foot plant and beautiful through the seasons. Now, you've got a lot of contrast going on here because you've got in the borders across from that, you've got different types of plants. You have shrubs that are now beginning to be a part of that ground cover, and you've got the grasses. Let me see. Stay on that for a minute because I need to reach back to some heavy plants back here. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do that. All right. I'm going to bring up a couple of wonderful plants that can be used as ground covers within that other idea of perennials or other types of ground covers. This is an abelia, and it's one that's supposed to stay around 3 feet. Now, with abelia, they are very trimmable. You can actually shear this plant. In the early spring is best because then new growth will come back out and cover that. And it's an absolutely beautiful addition. And look what happens when somewhere near that you have some kind, I'm going to just use this for contrast of texture and color. So this is what you think about when you're thinking about exciting ground covers. You've got a contrast of textures and the broadleaf against the fine leaf and the color change. So that is precisely what makes an area really interesting. Now, there are, I've got a tight space for them. There are others that are equally interesting. I love this, and it's in bloom right now at this time of the year here. And this is an absolute favorite here. It's I don't know if there's a variety. Yes, it's called Yuki Cherry. And this is a new one from Proven Winners. And it's Deutzia. Deutzia. Again, can be controlled height-wise, primarily in that 3 foot area, but can be controlled height-wise by shearing it after it blooms, okay? So shrubs can be a part of this ground cover idea. Let's go to the next picture, honey. I do want to get through these and leave a little bit of time for this one. Is here in the at the garden center, and this is an area of nothing but creeping thyme. I have to have my area where I grow all of the herbs near the kitchen because I use herbs heavily in cooking. Here it is used as a magnificent ground cover plant. Very few weeds grow through this ground cover. And this one. Next one in line is a beautiful juniper. This is the procumbens variety, and it's growing in the background with the contrast in front of it. This is a very narrow space, so I'm sure they keep this trimmed. There's mondo grass in the front. I absolutely love juniper blue Pacific because I have that at my home growing near the road, and I'm sure all of my neighbors think I'm trying to grow in the road, but it's coming out of that bed and literally growing on the asphalt because those branches catch the leaves, and they've developed this nice compost underneath it, and it's at least 6 feet, and it's beautiful, getting its nutrients from the bed, the mother plant, and it's marvelous. So ground cover, beautiful ground cover. And in the next picture, we can definitely come back and talk about some annuals. In the background of this is another perennial. It's heuchera, Heuchera. Heuchera. No, it is not. I have given you the wrong thing. For pity's sake, blank that out. Amsonia, Amsonia. But the variety is Hubrecti. That's my favorite because there's several varieties. Amsonia Hubrecti. Now, in the front of that, because I like to leave some space out there for some strong color. And there's New Guinea impatiens. The one that takes the sunshine is the what is the regular New Guinea, and the other one is just called sun patiens, but they're all New Guinea, okay? And they do beautifully provided they get enough water, because they are not good for a really dry area, okay? And then the next one, please. Getting back to a small shrub. This one is a beauty because it can stay under 2 feet. You see how dense it is? It becomes a ground cover. And this is Hypericum, Hypericum. It has beautiful small yellow flowers and then forms beautiful berries, which are great to cut for arrangements also. And the next one, then. Now we're getting back to another annual thing. We usually change out some of the garden areas a little bit each year. And this was one of my one that I enjoyed most, okay? We've got that aggressive creeping Jenny in the front, and it is a perennial, okay? And I absolutely love it because it cascades over that wall and it's bright coming and going down the 29. You can see it, okay? And behind that, growing up through that, again, is the New Guinea impatiens. These are the ones that get full morning sun because they love it, but they're shaded in the afternoon by the coleus that are behind it and the evergreens that are behind it. So this is primarily a showplace. Now, this is a fairly large space, but remember, if you don't have a large space, reduce it. Maybe you only have room for a container. This would make a beautiful container. This would be the creeping Jenny coming and drooping out, be the New Guinea around the center, the filler, and then you would have the coleus behind it, okay? Now, okay, we can't seem to go anywhere without walking through my own garden, okay? And it may not be quite what it once was, but thank goodness it has been planted with a lot of things that are beautiful in all seasons. And while I may not be able now to look at a border and be, oh, ecstatic, oh, that's to die for, okay, that's when you plant for a specific season. I have planted for a duration of color that comes and goes, so I can walk through the garden and see something that's interesting at all times. Why am I talking about this as a ground cover? Because very few weeds grow in this border, okay? Even though there are a lot of perennials that do die back in the wintertime. I use Liriope extensively. And I know there's love-hate relationships with that, and a lot of people aren't fond of Liriope. I am. Do not plant spicata unless you want it to run. This is the one that does not run, okay? And it's used as a border throughout a lot of my close up to the house gardens. And I can run the lawnmower along this and keep down the weeds and mow the lawn, and I don't have to edge it, okay? What's going on in here? Shrubs are in here, and a lot of perennials are in here. I have hydrangea. I have spirea. And one of my absolute favorites is this wonderful golden one that I just love. After it's bloomed, you can shear it, and it may rebloom a little bit. Not notorious for that, okay? You're even seeing a calla lily in bloom here. And they bloom for a fairly long period of time, but the foliage is interesting even when they are not in bloom. There's a lot of things. There's in the background, there's trees that come and go. I have dogwood that comes. I have fringe tree that comes. I have crepe myrtle, so I've got a lot going on. Now, this follows a path. In the next picture, you can see we are progressing from, you can see the turn of that border that still has the loroviape. And across from that, although you can't see it well in this picture, there is a ground cover underneath some azaleas and a few other things that is Pachysandra. And some people look at loroiape and Pachysandra as very common plants, but I use them in an uncommon way. And I love them. I wouldn't be without them because I have large spaces and I want to cut the maintenance as much as possible. So we're looking forward at this right now. Now I'm going to take you down further and we're going to progress to the side and go to the back of the house. Okay? Coming directly across from where that picture was is, again, a fantastic ground cover. This is an area that tends to be a bit on the moist side at times. And this was a native plant for me. It is a fern, a perennial fern, and it is aggressive, okay? It's the ostrich fern. It is aggressive, but if you want to cover a fairly large space, boy, that's the one for you. It is contained here. I do not have to worry about it because it is contained by pathways and by, on the opposite side, by mowing, etc. So I'm very pleased with this look. Behind it is a large holly and a massive group of camellias. But we're going to progress down that pathway to the back. Okay, we're turning the corner here, and we see what is commonly called strawberry begonia. We see boxwood. We see the edges of that fern and more fern in the distance there. We can see and be drawn by the beautiful Japanese maples that are in that area. But as a close-up in this next picture, you're seeing that saxifraga is the proper name, Saxifraga. It is a true saxifraga, but it's commonly called strawberry begonia. It is not a begonia. But this is what that ground cover looks like. I have very few things. Yes, I have to spasmodically go through and pull some weeds. But in the shade garden, when you make use of things as ground covers, there's very little weeding that has to be done until those oak trees shed their acorns. And you want to talk about invasive? We had a year last year, and the deer are terrible this year because there were no acorns. There are massed years of acorns where you can sometimes hardly put your finger on the ground without touching one. But last year, there were not any, so the deer are a bigger problem this year. Okay, saxifraga, or strawberry begonia, if you wish. And it is evergreen, semi-evergreen, okay? A lot of these perennials are, okay? Continuing on into this is an absolute favorite evergreen small shrub. Underneath this Pyrus japonica, there is a plant called sweet box, and it is very fragrant in March, usually. This is a small plant of it. It sends out little runners around it. This is not obnoxious, okay? Sends out little runners. This is how it increases in size. One could actually probably split this plant, although, yeah, you could easily with a sharp knife and so forth and plant it out. I have some areas that could be 8 or 10 feet wide of this particular plant. Sarcocoa. Let's see. Oh, here it is. I'll get it spelled right. Sarcoccocca. Sarcocoa. Okay. That's planted beneath that Pyrus plant. Now, if you want, excuse me, you want Paris japonica to be really beautiful azaleas too, give them some protection from the strongest afternoon sun. Should have brought some water in with me, Danny. Okay, we're going to progress and turn around the corner here into the absolute backyard. Turning the corner from this, okay? Look what the ground covers have done here. Everything is bordered with Pachysandra and Lariathe and Hosta. In the distance, there are some beautiful Japanese maples, and that is totally underplanted, except the sitting area, because there is a water garden back there of Pachysandra, and I absolutely love it. Now, it is not the native Pachysandra. The native doesn't fill in as quickly, and it's very slow. So for me, this Pachysandra works. And it is over to the side, and there's Lakothaway, there's dogwood, there's boxwood, there's rhododendron, there's camellias. So this all becomes ground covers. And the only thing it gets is an occasional weeding, and again, a mulching of leaf growth primarily. I don't usually mulch anything but leaf growth back in that area. I'm going to show you some little excerpts from the areas within that space, okay? Small areas, again, adding to the ground cover thing. You have the carex here. This is the golden one, but there's variegated ones. You have hosta, and you have a couple of different varieties of fern. And what this is small. This is how you take something you enjoy and reduce it to a small space. Okay. You could use this even in a small townhouse garden. I'm going to have to move along pretty quickly, or I'm not going to leave much time for questions. Okay, next picture. We're going to go through quickly. Mondo grass, boxwood, fern, astilbe mixed into this mix with hosta, so forth. Another mix of hosta with fern and boxwood, and the beauty of those Japanese maples. Oh my goodness, I love the Japanese maples. Now, this is a fun new one that I've done within the last few years, and this is an area that gets dapple sun all day and some direct sun, okay? And the big leaf that you see that's showing itself off right there is a tropical. And we are getting those in and out. The garden center will be getting a lot more. And boy, you talk about an emphasis to talk about. That's this wonderful number of different varieties of colocasia, Coloccasia, I think. And then planted around that is the dark leaf canna. And there's also a lot of impatiens because I wanted something bright there. So they're used as a ground cover around this. And in the next picture, you can see it a little better. This is how those ground covers work. You've got the black mondo grass, Ophiopogon. You've got the ferns, and you've got this massive thing of impatiens. Okay, next one. All right. You know, I have to always say that we have to teach the young. I've done it with my children, my grandchildren, and now God has blessed me with these great-grandchildren. And Clara is happily digging out some of the old cabbage and the old leftover greens that we've enjoyed so much. And this was last week, making preparations for planting the tomatoes and all of those wonderful things that we all enjoy having in an organic fashion. Okay. Now, so meet Clara again. I try to use Clara and Lydia and Elois are coming into this too, but they didn't make it into this picture. Okay, now let's come back to me. Okay, we're just briefly, let's talk about the deer. I know some of you have deer. I probably sat this down. Yeah, I did. Sat this down here. I use Bobex. It smells to high heaven when you spray it, okay? And you probably want to take a shower right afterwards. But fortunately, it only lasts for maybe 24 hours as far as the odor is concerned. But if the rain doesn't wash it off, I do spray frequently at this time of the year because you've got new growth coming along. And I really want to see my daylilies. I really want to see my oriental lilies. I really want to see my hosta. And so I have a pump sprayer because I've got a big space. But this is the most economical way to do it, and using the pump sprayer to spray your plants. And every couple of weeks now on the susceptible things, but when you get into summer, once a month is probably good enough, okay? It's the only way I would have anything in the garden. And as I said, this has been a tough year because there were no acorns, okay? Let's take some questions.
Alrighty, Peg, we have a couple of ID questions first, so I'll ask you those. Everybody, please feel free to send in your questions. Just a heads up, and Peg usually refers our plant clinic type questions if you have a struggling or unhealthy plant. We usually refer those on to the plant clinic. I'm happy to help you do that. So just be aware of that, and then send in any questions you have. That's fine, even if it's a plant clinic question, we may have to refer you on, but please feel free to write it down and
I
I'll keep
do
track of it.
that. You know, David Yost and I did a TV show for 20 years. And I always said, I will take care of the beauty and David will take care of the beast.
Yeah, I love
He
that.
could do both, but I try to garden organically. I am not anti-chemical, but I am very judicious use of chemicals.
Yes. All right. Well, first we have two ID questions, and one is the purple plant sitting to your left. What is that? The
It's
purple flowers.
heuchera, coral bells.
Oh, and sorry, no, the lilac, the flowers, the light color, the
This
one next
one,
to. Yes.
this one.
Yes.
Oh, I should have talked about this. And I have beautiful pictures of this in my garden, and we have it growing here in the gardens at Fair Oaks. And it's native, by the way. Okay, it's a phlox. It's a type of phlox,
Oh.
but it's a ground cover type phlox. Okay, and it blooms in the spring. And there's two varieties: Divaricata, Divaricata, and Stolonifera. Stolonifera, Stolonifera, which is a little lower than this. Both bloom in the spring. Absolutely gorgeous plants, okay? And native. If you're, I'm not a specific native. I love natives. We've got plenty of them, but I also love other things.
Yeah, I love phlox. I just I don't ever get to see it up close. I only see it planted like in masses from a distance.
Beautiful. This one is lovely.
That's gorgeous. Okay, the next question. You probably know this without pulling up the slide. Outside the Fair Oaks store, you showed the bed with the New Guinea impatiens, the creeping jenny, and the coleus.
Yeah.
That weeping evergreen tree shrub that's behind it. Do you know
Blue
what
Atlas cedar.
weeping atlas?
Blue Atlas cedar.
Okay, we
And
had a
that
question
has
about that, and I was like, oh, I used to know that.
been
And
there for many years. So as you can see from that, if you decide to plant it, be sure you give it plenty of space.
yes.
And I always wanted at Babs and Billy Jane's, and never quite finished it because they had a beautiful area where we could have trained it up and across and over an entrance area. But anyway, it's a lovely plant.
Thank you. We had a question about that, and I was like, I used to know the name, and I don't know it now. All right, so let's get into our questions. Okay, our first is probably a plant clinic question. This is about the geranium roseanne. This person has healthy geranium roseanne, but it's not blooming very much, even though it's getting sun. Is it a, or is there anything you would address there, or would you want to have me refer on to plant clinic?
As long as the foliage is looking good, and I don't know how one for like, because I have no trouble getting Roseanne to bloom, okay? It's not a heavy bloomer like you see this blocks, but it's sporadic throughout the summer.
Okay,
Blossoms are great, and it's ranging, okay?
gotcha.
So
Okay,
it's you're not gonna get that kind of bloom, not for me, out of Roseanne, okay? I didn't touch on fertilization. I don't really have time to go into that right now, but be careful not to over fertilize either, okay? That's the best I can do with that one. And it
okay,
may be the best they can do.
okay. Sounds good. Um, have you had any issues with the deer eating the creeping thyme?
Never have had them eat my true herbs.
Okay. Yeah, they don't generally go after herbs very
Now,
often.
having said that, this year has been exceptional because there were no acorns and a lot of things that they did not have.
Okay.
I have Nandina in my garden. I have never seen anything touch Nandina leaves, and I watched the deer eat some of that the other day.
So sometimes if they get desperate, they'll eat stuff they wouldn't
I'm not
usually.
going to tell you that anything is totally deer proof, but normally they don't eat herbs.
But yeah. Okay. Um, oh, this is a fun one. Are there any, I know we used to sell some like this. I don't know if we still do. Are there any walkable ground cover options other than grass? Like, would you recommend like a moss? I don't know if we still sell those like steppables that were at the Gainesville store. I don't know how well they worked, but I know.
We totally sell steppables. And it has been a very good thing. Maybe it was a little bit of a phase that people learned you better step carefully. Okay. I'll tell you, I have seen a what supposedly grassy area, and it was a fairly decent size, certainly 20 by 25 or 30, of total varieties of thyme. And that could occasionally be stepped on, okay? But most of these, a lot of which are succulents, there's one called Mace Zeus that you could step on for a bit. And I don't even have a love-hate relationship anymore with that one. I have a hate relationship with that one because I planted it wanting it to do a specific thing, and it just went all over the place.
Oh gosh,
It
yeah, that's not
was,
ideal.
and it was just not controllable for me. I have friends who absolutely love it, but we do have steppables. They can be stepped on periodically, but it is not a get out and play or run through it or use it frequently
Yeah,
thing.
I don't host a soccer match on them, but you can step on. They can handle some
That's
speed.
that's just my opinion, okay?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's what I've heard generally is the steppables are like you can step on them, but they're not going to tolerate like kids running back and forth
And
constantly.
no, they will not.
Okay, next question. Got that one. Okay. Um, oh, first of all, I don't know, you might know this person. I'm sorry, because the name looks familiar, but Michelle says hello from Quitman, Georgia, if you know.
Oh, that's my daughter.
Okay, I thought so.
Oh, that's my
I was like, I think
daughter.
it's a family member.
She's down in home country.
Okay.
That's where I was born and raised, and that's where a lot of my family still is. And that's the farm that I talk about. Hello, everybody, because I think they're watching now.
Yeah, I was like, this name looks familiar. I think it's family, but I'm not sure.
That's very
Um,
exciting.
all right, so here's our next question. Behind my home, I have dry shade, a slope, and deer. Under very mature oaks, she's dealing with erosion. So she has Japanese pachysandra there, and she's wondering if she should remove it or try and split it up because she's afraid if she tries to move it around too much, the erosion's going to get worse, I think. Um, but she's trying to get some plants to help with the erosion issue.
Well, I think that Cassandra will do that
Okay.
as anything. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you put several inches of soil over a beautiful oak's roots. You just don't do that, you know. But what you can do is put maybe 3 inches of the leaf compost on it and plant other Pachysandra into that. You don't want to go in and make a lot of holes and destroy a lot of those surface roots, because you'd be surprised how close some of those roots are to the soil surface. And it's fine to plant underneath them. You just don't want to plant deeply underneath them, okay, and disturb some of those bigger roots. But certainly if there is some erosion, I liriope, to get started, to get a handle on it, where it drains off too badly. Liriope is a great thing for that, and so is the Pachysandra. Once some of that is established well, then you can add some of the other things that are more interesting.
Okay, sounds good. Um, Next question. Do you have an opinion? And I think I might know the answer, but using Carex instead of Liriope on borders, or are they both good to use?
No, there's a big difference there, okay?
Yeah.
I had a family member say to me the other day, I need to come and get some more liriope, Mammy, because my little bit of liriope died. And I said to her, nobody kills liriope, okay? So what is going on here, you know? Liriope is such a hardy thing. You could almost sit it on top of the ground and it would grow. Plus, even if you bought a 1 gallon container, you can split that into small pieces. So that's my borders, or that is what I'm talking about for the erosion control. This plant is hardy, but there's difference, okay? This is what you use for an accent, not as a border. You do it in groupings as an accent.
Gotcha. Okay.
Big difference.
All right. Next question. Um, you had a photo in your garden with a border that had bricks covered in moss. Oh, was that intentional? And if so, how did you do that?
Nature did that.
Oh,
And I could have cleaned it off because occasionally I do, but I really kind of like it. I'm a fan of moss, number one, and I do have a lot of large oaks and some areas that stay moist, some that are bone dry right now, and some that stay moist, and that's where I get the moss, and I love it. Okay, but the Lord did that.
nature did that work itself. Can you use poppies as ground cover?
Use what?
Poppies.
No.
Okay.
Poppies are incredible. They're absolutely beautiful, but they're not as hardy as what I term as a ground cover.
Ground cover.
They
Okay.
can be a part of this ground cover assembly.
But they can't do the heavy lifting of being
Not the heavy lifter. No, no.
the ground cover. Gotcha. Okay. Last question. This is about Nandina. And I feel like I've heard this. Are the Nandina berries, are they poisonous to birds? Is that something people should worry about?
About 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer than that, there was an incident in Georgia where they said this grouping of birds ate the Nandina berries and they died. And I've forgotten which bird it was, okay? I have never, and I have bukus of birds, had any one of them eat a berry. In fact, I've never had anything eat a berry. Now, I know there's a lot of people that are really anti-Nandina. I don't happen to be one of those people. I enjoy my Nandina. I love the blossoms and I love the berries and I love to decorate with them. Now, I don't want my grandchildren to eat them, and you have to be careful with children because they're attracted to berries. And so, anytime you've got little ones, like little Elias is 2.5, I'm not going to just turn him loose in the garden, but I teach them too. You don't do this, or you ask about that, or whatever. But and also they're tall, so they're taller than he is, you know. But I have never lost a bird. I've never had a bird eat one. Okay.
That's good. Yeah, and I'll say too, thank you. Nice message. Um, I would say for people who are really curious about birds and that kind of stuff, we actually have a wildlife specialist on staff at our Gainesville store. He really does a lot of work with birds and native animals. He does an education class a lot of times, the years for kids. So I'd be happy to refer anybody to him if they want to get in depth on that. Um,
I'm pretty sure that that was the only incident that I've heard about.
yeah,
Birds actually ate those berries and died.
yeah, no, that's what I'm like. I think I have heard of that vaguely, but nothing major. Um, and I'm no I know the least of everybody. Anybody on staff could talk about that more than me. All right, well, that's all of our questions, Peg. Thank you so much. I've gotten some nice messages. It's 1 o'clock on the dot. Do you want to wrap up with anything specific for?
Just enjoy your garden. It was a lovely morning this morning. It was cool and pleasant, and it's a great time to be out in the garden doing that work. And it's, yes, it's work, but it's good for your body, it's good for your mind. And we are loaded with plants right now. This is the peak of the season. And it's just fun to be working here among the plants and the people. And I love it. And I'd love you to love it too. So enjoy and stay well.
Thank you so much, Peg. Yeah, everybody get out there and enjoy the spring. I know weather's great and it's
Great.
peak bloom at the garden center. Thank you, Peg. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.